spiritual disciplines not only makes us live better, but it makes our life more enjoyable. Sometimes we need to redefine what enjoyable is, right? What better means. So that's been the series, and we've talked about reading our Bible. That sometimes can be a chore, right? But man, when we get into it, and again, maybe redefining why we're doing it, praying. We talked about this idea of spending time with God, right? And so today we want to talk about service. And it's the discipline that focuses on gathering ourselves and others to gather our resources, not just physical resources, but our resources of personality, our resources of spirituality, our resources of emotion and stuff to serve the needs of others, to help others, to bless others. And it requires a commitment both in planning and in attitude and in action. So we want to live a better life. We think of spiritual disciplines as prayer, Bible study, fasting. I'm not a big fan of fasting, but have any of you ever fasted on purpose? Yeah, it's hard, but man, it does what it's supposed to do. It refocuses our mind. We may talk about that at some point, not as part of some like diet plan, but yeah, not intermittent, but like spiritual fasting. Uh, but this serving others, it shapes our heart. One author said that shapes our heart. But what I found fascinating, this is where I was getting to before I realized I wasn't recording. Almost every article ends with, so here's how you should serve in your church. Which again is great. You should, right? But I realized, a lot of the purpose of that idea is it gets all this idea of we're supposed to serve and then turns it into making sure this organization runs. Now, absolutely we need volunteers. It would be depressing if I didn't have Dave and Chuck and Kevin and John and coming to help set up. You would be sitting on the floor, right? We would have no sound. Like there's stuff that needs to happen. We'd have no treats. All of you who volunteer in so many ways, the board, the prayer team. But I want you to know my goal today is not to get you to volunteer for church stuff. You'll notice Restore does not have a ton of programs. And that's a decision we made about 10 years ago when we realized we would rather energize and educate and encourage people to go serve in what's already happening. And the code that Jim and I created back when Jim and I were co-pastors was we don't wear the matching t-shirt. It's okay to go find somebody who's doing good work, even maybe if they're not even Christians. Somebody who's doing good work and join them. Work with them. Partner with them. And jump in there. And especially if you've been gifted by God, if you have a talent and a heart for something. And so that's what I want to encourage you today. Now, do we do stuff together? Sometimes we do. It's powerful. I'm not saying that is not the purpose, that's not a good thing, but I am saying it was fascinating to me how much of this was like volunteer recruitment Sunday sermons and ideas and articles. So that's not what this is today. The other thing about service is it can be performative. Sometimes you'll see groups where serving, and it's kind of like that's why they wear the matching shirt. Or one of the reasons. One of the reasons, camaraderie. It's great. If you own like a t-shirt business, I am really sorry. I'm not meaning to slam your thing, but there's this idea that we need to do it. I found out that sometimes we think not performing always just for people, but sometimes I think we're performative. We serve so that God sees us and blesses us. And I just came across this fascinating story last week. Have any of you heard the term cargo cult?
Oh yeah.
Brent, I knew Brent. Okay. And this idea that on the South Pacific and these islands at the beginning of World War II, islands where they had not much contact with the outside world, all of a sudden, American or European, but primarily American planes just would land and build an airstrip on this little island because it was the island hopping thing. And they would drop supplies and they would bring in food and they would bring in technology and fuel, all the stuff, and they were there, and the people there benefited from that. They got jobs and they got food and they got like stuff they'd never heard of, and literally food was dropping from the sky. And then the war ended and they packed everything up and left. And a couple of these peoples on these islands began building bamboo airplanes and coconut headphones and doing the markings for the guys who had helped the planes land, doing all those rituals, hoping to call back the airplanes that were dropping food from the sky. And I thought, oh man, how often do we do Christianity like that? We're just going to go through these motions and hope somehow God sees it and drops more blessing out of the sky to us. And I think one of the big ones is service. That we're going to go out and do this stuff and kind of with an eye towards the sky, hoping it works out. We do the performance, but the motive and the understanding is not there. So we don't want to do that. We want to see the service as it really is. And I believe a couple of things. This is the all introduction. Buckle up for the sermon. Right? We want to be motivated by true affection and compassion for others. Right? Because we love God and we have a desire not only to obey what he said, but we want to live godly. We use that phrase a lot, be godly. That means to be godlike. Not godlike like superpower Thor, but godlike like we're like God. And God loves his people. God loves people so much so that not only has he created us, but he's provided for us and blesses and wants us to be near him and has deep, compassionate affection for us that carries out in action, even to the point of Jesus. Service is what Jesus came to do. We'll talk about that, and I want you to keep this. Service is our superpower. When we want to reach the world, service is how we do it. We care for people, we do for people, and we do it because we love them, not just because we're obeying a mandate. Right? It's the difference between a waiter who's there for the tip and a waiter who's there because they just like people. Nathan's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Everybody's there for the money. We get that. But you can tell the ones that just are kind of genuinely like being around people, right? You're jaded. Just kidding.
I worked in service.
I was going to say, you can tell someone who's been a waiter before, right? But there's a genuine selflessness in service that's our superpower, right? And how do we know that? Well, first of all, Jesus, the first point. Jesus is the example of service. We're supposed to live like Jesus. He is our example. That's the whole point of Jesus, we follow his example and teachings. Mark 10, 42 to 45. So Jesus called them together and he says, you know that the rulers of the world lord it over the people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be a servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone else. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and give his life as a ransom for many. I am going to increase the font. Ooh, hey, now the sermon's going to be way more understandable. Jesus came not to be served, but to serve. Just the basic foundational understanding of why God came to earth. Why he came to be here. True greatness in God's kingdom, and we've talked about this before, the true greatness in God's kingdom is measured by humility and service, not by your status. And this spiritual discipline begins with following Christ's example. We are genuinely to offer service to everyone. Leaders are servants in God's kingdom. And this is the profound thought to me, and this occurred to me this year. I've been thinking a lot about this concept this year. That it's not that we need to work hard. If we're a leader, we need to look like a servant. That's cargo cult. The genuine, those who are real leaders in God's kingdom are the ones who are servants. So it's not like the leaders who are already up there, the bosses, those in charge, have to pretend to serve or find ways to serve. No, in God's economy, the way God looks at people, those who are doing the most work, those who are doing the labor, those who are serving, they are the leaders. I think of it as this leaders versus bosses, right? Leaders live to make life better for those they're leading. Bosses want to control and exercise authority, and maybe for good reasons. Maybe they really want to help. But if we have a boss mentality, we want to exercise control and make people do the right stuff. If you're a leader, you want to make their lives better. And all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it's corrective. Sometimes it's encouraging. Sometimes it's giving. But the idea is that those who are leaders, and the best way to make sure someone else's life is better is to serve them. Jesus defines greatness through sacrificial service by pointing to himself, who is God on earth, to show us what it's like to be godly. Says, hey, I'm not here for people to take care of me. I'm here to take care of you. We need to follow not only what he teaches, but his example. And we're supposed to do that for all men. I like that. The ransom for all men. Jesus didn't come to serve those who were good enough to be served, or those who really said the right words, or those who showed up in the right place to be served, for all men. And also, I love this, that the idea, the greatest service is this ransom for all men, gave his life for us. But Jesus paid that price for all of us with his life of compassion and service, not only his death. If the death was the most important thing, then why come and spend all those years teaching and serving and showing and telling us and giving the example of service? The point was his life of service and compassion is the ransom. And then his death defeats death. His life of service matters, not just his death. Reinforce it. John 13, 12 through 15. Again, you guys hear this a lot. It's one of my favorite passages, and it's such a great illustration. After washing their feet, he put on his robe again, and he sat down and he asked, do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that's what I am. And since I am your Lord and teacher, I have washed your feet, and you ought to wash each other's feet. I've given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. I love it when the Bible's clear. A couple of things here. One is, it's like, hey, you call me Lord and Master, Lord and teacher, Rabbi. And you're right, I am. And the way that I act in that role, in that space, is to do the dirtiest, most humble job. And he says, and not only that, and when he's very clear, and this is getting to the end, right? He's washing the feet. It's like getting to the end. His last message is not, so make sure your doctrine is sound and everybody knows you're right or knows where they're wrong. No, his first thing is, so here it is. I've given you this example to follow. I served you in the most menial, practical, human way possible. And then you're to do that to each other. The practice is you guys wash each other's feet, and then that's how you're supposed to treat the world. Serve. Be a servant. This occurred to me, this has been a cornerstone of ministry for me since college. It occurred to me when I was really irritated. I'm going to tell a secret here that I don't know if I've shared. I was working for the college. I was in a ministry, and I had one of those days where I went 16-hour days serving in the hot Southern California sun. And at the end, I would just wrapped up, and I had done a pretty profound job. I'm pretty great up there. And I was exhausted and ready to go just crash. And someone came to me and is like, hey, can you go do this? Kind of a menial task. And I was so irritated. And then I was convicted. Almost, I don't know if it was an audible voice from heaven. It was kind of booming and echoed, so I don't know, but it was, you really want to be a servant until someone treats you like a servant. We all say, yeah, I want to be serving, until someone kind of treats you like a servant. That's the crux. Are we really serving if we kind of have our limit? If we kind of decide, I need to get some back. I need to be thanked. I need to be treated with right. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have boundaries and you don't deserve to be treated with respect, all of that stuff. You understand that. But there's a moment where I realize, oh, I really kind of want to get whatever this servant thing is giving me rather than really caring. Right? So we need to treat, and foot washing is one of those things. It explicitly says, follow this example of the most menial thing that the lowest, earliest servant would do. And people, I suspect, again, I wasn't there, I'm not that old, but they suspect that it was kind of a thing like you wouldn't even really notice. Like you'd come in and someone would wash your feet while you were still chatting with your friends, right? You're not going to it's not going to be a profound moment. Maybe you'll flip on a bright, shiny drachma or whatever the coin is, right? But it's that moment that doing the service that needs to be done without expecting reward, but because someone needs to be helped. Washing feet is the example. I love that there are all sorts of things we can do to serve people. Teaching is one. He said he was the teacher. Of course we should teach. Leading is a service. Of course, yes, he was the leader. Jesus was, right? There's all sorts of things we can do to serve people, but his example is the lowliest of the low, the practicalist of the practical to serve. In fact, have you ever had your feet washed? Been to a church where they do that? Or been to a service? I've had it done once, man, and it is awkward. Not just because of that weird thing that's on my toe. Thank you. That was purely for Nathan. But it is awkward because the reason it's so awkward is someone is being so humble. And it reminds me of, man, that's what Christ called us to do. Again, not a performative ritual, but finding the thing that just needs to be done and doing it. Beautiful, beautiful lesson. Jesus did a service for a lesson, but I don't think it was just for a lesson, by the way. I think the disciples' feet were gross, and there was no servant to wash their feet. And maybe they all kind of came in and were walking around, and it was like, somebody needs to wash the feet. And Jesus did it. I love that. A motive of affection and compassion and observing a need that needed to be done. So a couple of thoughts before we move on. So Jesus is our example. We're supposed to serve. He explicitly says us. I think for us, there's some things. Why don't we want to serve? I was trying to think, and sometimes I make these lists of why the opposite. I got to admit, most of these are very personal. I'm like, why don't I want to do that? Why don't I want to serve? Maybe these will help you. Sometimes I think I don't have the skill set. Something needs to be done, and I don't know how to do it. So I call Chuck. But sometimes it's a thing that needs to be done, and I don't know. And rather than actually do it or find a resource or find a way or learn, I just kind of ignore it. Or it's my own insecurity speaking. Maybe I'm not going to be good at that, and I'll be embarrassed. Don't have the training. I got to admit, sometimes I don't like people. Sometimes the people that need to be served, I just am tired of it. I don't want to help them. Sometimes I'm tired. Right? Sometimes we can't serve because we have kids running around. Sometimes we serve because we don't have any kids running around. Because we're old, because we're too young. Sometimes I want to be the boss. I'll be glad to serve if I get to be in charge of it. And it runs efficiently and well. I don't want to serve as some Yahoo is running it. And it's disorganized. Sometimes I don't want to serve because I don't want to be the boss. Sometimes as a pastor, I show up and everyone's like, okay, well, you tell us what to do. And I want to just slink into the corner and be told what to do. Sometimes I don't want to serve because I'm afraid someone will have expectations. Sometimes I don't want to serve because I'm afraid I'll be criticized. And this one hurts because sometimes I'm like, I don't want to be criticized because I know how I've criticized others. Sometimes I just have a fear of failure. I don't have time. I don't have energy. I don't see the point. Sometimes like, why would I help? They're just going to be back in this same spot later. Too busy with other more important stuff. Or maybe they don't need me. My answer to that always, I have to remind myself, is yes, they do. Yes, they do. It's like the body. God uses this analogy often. In many different authors, many different ways, the idea that we're supposed to be this group, that we all have our gift. We all have our talent. We all have the thing we're supposed to do. And kind of when we work together, everything gets done, both in this little group, but out there. And the spiritual gifts, those gifts that were given supernaturally by God, are not meant to make us, puff us up and make us powerful. What explicitly is to serve the body, serve just not just the church. But when we serve the church, why is that? So that we can serve each other and grow? No, the idea is we serve so we can go out and serve more. Right? We're way more effective when we come together and everybody's doing their thing. Right? And if we don't do it, if we let those excuses come up, then some eye has to act like an ear. And that's not super helpful. One of my favorite things about watching my grandson is watching him learn to crawl. And I can say from watching him this weekend, his face is not as good at moving as his legs or his knees. Right? Step, step, plonk. Right? We all have to use our gifts and our talents. Again, not so that we just are indwelled, and not that we point to ourselves and we have a more comfortable life, so we're all empowered to do our service to the community, to love others. So when I go, I can't do this, I know I can point to a Chuck, or I know I can call Brent or John, or I know that I can call Barbie, and right, that there's something we will be able to do that maybe I can't do it, but I know, hey, I'm just an eye, but I know I got a great ear over there. So we increase our ability to serve our community and the people. So let's be like Jesus. Let's be like Jesus. How do we do that? Just something practical. Give it our best shot, a real shot, not performative. Gather a squad to be like Jesus and do it gladly, out of affection and compassion, just like Christ. And I think number two, so besides, it's very clear we're supposed to serve. That's not a lot of people are arguing that. Not a lot of sane people. But we're supposed to serve as followers of Christ. Number two is service is a key to living better. Shockingly, counterintuitively, giving away is one of those things that helps us live better. Galatians 6, 9, and 10. So let's not get tired of doing what's good. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. Therefore, whenever we have the opportunity, we should do good to everyone, especially those in the family of faith. I love this for so many reasons. This is, again, one of my key verses in my life. This idea is, first of all, you want to enjoy your life, you want to avoid burnout, serve others. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have Sabbath. One of the spiritual disciplines we're going to talk about is Sabbath, taking time off. But the best way to avoid burnout is not to, I'm going to take a week and watch and burn through an entire season of a sitcom. The best way to avoid burnout is to serve. Don't get tired doing good. Right? And the point is, how we live better, just at the right time, we're going to receive this blessing. This will bring blessings that we long for, even if the blessing is not kind of how we defined it, that we will receive blessing. Maybe it's not the blessing we expect, but it will be a blessing. Therefore, we have the opportunity to do good to everyone. And I love this too, because it kind of gives us this idea. Yes, we're supposed to serve fellow Christians. Yeah, we're the easy ones to serve. We see your face. We're part of the same club. We're part of the same family. But then what do? Right? We're supposed to then go and do it to everyone. It's like, hey, serve everybody, but especially kind of focus on the people around. Right? Keep your eyes open. So it's not just exclusive to Christians. Don't give up doing what is good. John 10:10. The thief's purpose is to steal and kill and destroy. My purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. This is a powerful passage. The purpose of the world system and those who work within it is to take resources, kill and destroy people, and destroy the good that's been done. The purpose of Jesus and the calling for his followers is those in the kingdom of God, is to bless others and see them fulfilled and blessed. How? By helping them live better. Giving us everything we want and the luxury to live a comfortable life. Nope, that is not the point. It's not what he says. Giving us a full soul that receives the Spirit by serving others. We grow in the Spirit. Our connection to God grows and our fulfillment grows as we serve others. And I got to admit, I know that kind of can ring hollow to somebody who's struggling. When you're at a low place and someone says, hey, buck up. Right? No, I understand it's hard, but we need to understand that God will give us blessing. What is the opposite of the thief, the stealing and destroying? It's to improve the life. The thief only cares about improving their life, even at the expense of others. Jesus and followers of Jesus want to improve the lives of others, even at our own expense. And in turn, that brings blessing, a more fulfilling life, really, with lots, whether we have a lot or whether we have a little. That is called blessing. We will grow. Maybe we need to redefine blessing and cursing. Will you indulge me for just a second to go on a little tangent? No, we should. Okay, here's a little tangent. This idea of blessing and cursing. One of the things I've noticed, if something horrible happens to somebody, we fall on this idea of a really mysterious, and a really loving nature of God. We say, I don't know. I do believe that God is good. And it is a mystery. I don't know why that's true, why this has happened. I think we need to be willing to do the same with blessing. Right? Not just wealth and success and a good parking spot. That's not what blessing is. Even in those things, but really being blessed, when something good happens to us, when we say we're being blessed, we need to remember that God is still mysterious, he really is, and still compassionate, really, and it has the nature of God. And we need to say, just as I don't understand this horrible thing that can happen, I don't understand why I'm being blessed right now. I didn't earn this. I'm not better than everybody else, right? Especially for those kind of blessings. When we pull right up, you'll pull right up to the ferry, and you get on, and it takes off. Oh, God blessed you that day, my friend. Or you go into the store, and something you've been looking for 2 years is marked down 75%. Oh, you must have prayed this morning. God is blessing you. Right? No, I think we need to understand God. The blessing that we give, that isn't the blessing. The blessing we give is connection to God and connection to people. And that grows when we serve. When we serve and we give, it gives us a deeper connection to God and the satisfaction and the joy that comes from improving others' lives. Which may in turn improving those lives, even those who are not followers, even those who are maybe even, as Paul says in Philippians, enemies of the cross. It improves our community, which then in turn can improve our lives. We can grow. It's one of the reasons you guys give to the church. You sacrifice because you believe in this ministry. You believe in what we're trying to do together. And so there's a thing, I have a hard time explaining this to people. I was chatting with somebody who's not a part of our church, but supportive of what we do. And he was like, people see church as a commodity they're paying for. You come to church, you give. If you don't show up, you don't give. Because I'm not getting anything out of it. And his suggestion, he goes, you should call all those people you have coffee with, all those people that you know, all those people that are supportive and really love your mission, but they can't be there for one reason or another, and call them all up and say, I want you to subscribe to Restore. And I'm like, I don't think I can do that. But this idea, the reason we serve is not so that we get right back, but it's because we want to grow closer to God and we want to improve the lives of others. Whether that's with our resources, with our time, with our emotional effort, with our care. That makes our life better. Right? You may have volunteered or served somebody, and at the end of it been exhausted and maybe even felt sometimes put upon, but I'll tell you what, your soul grows. Our connection to God and to others grows. It is transcendent and deeper. It is life, and life more abundant. Not amazing wealth, not constantly happy, not absolute health all the time. Yes, there's eternity coming, but beyond that, but for now, right now, there's an ability to connect with God and to be godly that we would not understand if we didn't serve like God served. When we serve like Jesus served, we get to be godly. We're being like God. That's satisfaction. And then 1 Peter 4:10, God has given each of you a gift from the great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. I'm resisting the temptation to do a whole spiritual gift chunk. I'm not going to give the lists or what they are, but you have been given a spiritual ability. And that spiritual ability is activated when you serve. Not just volunteer in church. Sure, volunteer in church. Maybe that's it. But when you're caring for somebody, there may be a moment when there's a type of service that you're doing. You're sitting down and having coffee and letting somebody, maybe you're just the person that when you sit down and chat with somebody, you're going through the grocery line and they tell you their whole life story and all the struggles they're having right now. Guess what? That might be your gift. To encourage and to listen and to care. Maybe you are incredibly skilled at something. You can serve by going and helping, doing helps. Maybe it's teaching. Maybe you're incredibly gifted. You understand things well. And not only do you understand it, but you understand them and their understanding that they understand. Obviously, that's not my gift. But the point is, You may understand somebody else and be able to communicate that. But not only is it activated and you do it well, but your soul grows and our whole community gets better. We realize our purpose. The reason Jesus stayed for 33 years, served. The reason he gave us that example and that command, and the reason we're still here, not just up to heaven, is because we're supposed to serve. Everyday acts of kindness. Someone wrote this. I didn't write it down who it was. I'm sorry. Everyday acts of kindness become acts of worship. Service is holy. Service is holy because it reflects God's heart. So just some practical stuff for us. Some stuff to do, your homework this week. Look for ordinary opportunities at home, at church, at work, out in the community. Let's open our eyes as you're praying for. Maybe it's, like I said, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a neighbor, someone down the street, someone you see. Maybe it's a community. You realize there's a community that I want to serve, a group of people, a chunk of people. Look for our opportunities. Open our eyes to see the people that need and see how we can provide. And maybe if you can't, gather your squad. Gather your people, right? To see those needs met. Service is more than volunteering. It is a lifelong practice that shapes us into the likeness of Jesus. I'm going to end there and pray, and then we'll watch the benediction, and then I'll give the benediction. God, thank you so much. God, you've given us clear instructions and a great example, a holy example of how to care for people. God, start with our heart and our soul to give us affection and compassion for everyone. And then help us see and recognize where we can care and serve. And then give us the courage and the ability and the strength to meet those needs. And God, help us to do it from a pure heart because we love them and we love you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Mark 2:17. When Jesus heard this, he told them, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. I have come to call not those who think they're righteous, but those who know they're sinners. May we be a people who learn to seek a better life by following the perfect example of Jesus to serve others and in turn grow closer to God and closer to others, to the glory of God and the flourishing of our neighbors. Blessings, and we will see most of you next week.